All right, let's do some Mathity-Math. Says here, multiply and simplify the radical expressions. All right, so basically we need to multiply these and simplify them as the instructions stated. And you can really tackle these a lot of ways. You could jump into this straight away and multiply these all together and then try to break them down. And that's one way to do it. Or, and I think I prefer this method, you can break them up first and then multiply them. And that really lets you use the communicative nature of multiplication to your advantage, and also lets you work with smaller numbers, which can be to your benefit. So we're going to start here with the square root of 18x. Let's really break this thing down step by step so we can see how it looks. So we have a negative sign, that's fine. And then we have the square root of 18. And actually, this is being multiplied by the square root of x. See how I'm breaking it apart just from the beginning. I'm saying this is actually 18 times x, and they're both under their own radical. And you'll see why I do this as we go through. There's my multiplication sign. And then you can kind of follow this pattern. The square root of 12x is actually the same as the square root of 12 times the square root of x. Okay? And you'll see why we do that here in a second. So now I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to look at the square root of 18 by itself, and I'm going to try to find some perfect square values that I can pull out of it. And so let's think about this. The perfect squares, we know 1 times 1 is 1. We won't use that. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 does not go into 18 nicely. Next we have 3 times 3 is 9, and there we go. 9 is our winner. So we can say, well, we're going to break this down even further, and we're going to say that the square root of 18 is actually the same as the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. And this is the square root of x. That's fine. And you can see I'm just kind of breaking this thing all apart. So now I'm going to go to 12. Same idea, I'm going to try and find perfect square values that divide nicely into 12. So again, 1 times 1 is 1. We're not going to use 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 does go nicely into 12. And if you want to check the next number up just to make sure, you can say 3 times 3 is 9. 9 does not work. And then 4 times 4 is 16. 16 is too big. So we're back down to 4. 2 times 2 is 4. So we know this is the same thing as saying the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And then this is our square root of x. So now I have all these little components. These are all the pieces that kind of build up to here. And now we can just kind of go through this step by step. We know the square root of 9 is 3. So I have negative 3. And then the square root of 2 is negative 3 times the square root of 2. Now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to look right here. I have a pair. I have the square root of x, and I have the square root of x. I'm going to draw like a little thought bubble over here so we can kind of think about what we're doing here conceptually. Okay? The square root of x times the square root of x is the same as the square root of x squared, right? The same thing twice means it's squared. And we know that a square root and a square will cancel. So if you have a square root of x being squared, those would cancel. You'd be left with just x. So this and this, when they combine, will just cancel to become x. All right. What is the square root of 4? Well, that is 2. And we can do another thought bubble here if you want to kind of go down this rabbit hole. It's kind of interesting, right? If you started with the square root of 4, you can say, well, that is the same as the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. And that is the same as the square root of 2 being squared, and the square root and the square cancel, and that's why we get left with just the 2. Okay? And then we have here the square root of 3. At this point, we have broken down and simplified as far as we can go, so now we just need to execute our final stage of multiplication. And when we multiply these, all you have to do is think about everything outside the radical multiplies with everything outside the radical, and everything inside the radical multiplies with everything inside the radical. So let's do our outsides first. I would say negative 3 times x is negative 3x, and negative 3x times 2 is negative 6x. Okay? And root 2 times 3 gives us root 6. And that's it. You can't go any further. There's nothing else we can take out of 6 that will go perfectly, right? Because what do we have? 1 times 1 is 1. Nope. 2 times 2 is 4. Nope. 3 times 3 is 9. Too big. So we're all done, and this is it. You have multiplied, and you have simplified the radical expressions. Very, very good job. Okay, as always, go ahead and subscribe if you want to be notified when I make more amazing math videos just for you. And if you got any questions or comments or need clarifications, please just leave a comment below, and I'll do my best to answer your question as quickly as I can. All right, thank you. Goodbye.